strategies for mitigating greenhouse gas emissions and adapting to the impacts of climate change on coffee production. So through engaging presentations and discussions, we aim to inspire you to take action and promote sustainability and resilience in your own communities and, of course, around the world. We believe that this webinar will not only increase your awareness of the impacts of climate change on the coffee sector, but also promote greater engagement and collaboration among participants and stakeholders. That's the purpose of this community of practice. We are confident that by the end of this webinar, you will be motivated and inspired to make a positive difference in the world of coffee production. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you'll find this webinar informative, engaging, and empowering. Miki, can you put the program agenda?
Can you see the screen?
Yes, okay. So today's program agenda, we have welcome remarks, which I've just done. An opening remark by Aurora Martin from Spanish Corporation. She's a project manager for this project. And there will be a brief overview of the topic and its relevance to the coffee sector by Dr. Valam Tadessa, who is a research advisor for this project. And we'll be having two presentations, as I have said earlier. The first one will be on understanding the impact of climate change on coffee. And this presentation will cover the overview of the science behind climate change and its effects on coffee production. There will be a discussion of the potential impacts of climate change on coffee quality, quantity, and distribution. And there will be some case studies of how climate change is affecting coffee farmers and communities in different regions. And Dr. Zannaba Makonnen, who is a senior researcher and director for Climate Science Research Directorate at the Ethiopian Forestry Development, will take us through this presentation. Next slide. So second presentation will be also by Dr. Zannaba. It will be on the strategies for mitigating climate change in the coffee sector. And he'll be discussing the best practice for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in coffee production and processing. He will also talk about the overview of climate smart agriculture techniques and their potential benefits for coffee farmers and the environment. And he will take us through some case studies of successful initiatives for promoting sustainable coffee production and mitigating climate change impacts. I don't know whether the last session will be presentation 3. That would be on adaptation to climate change in the coffee sector, and this presentation will be made by Javier Hoyos, who is the technological manager of the Coffee and Coffee Innovation Technological Park at Tecnicafe, which is based in Colombia. He will be taking us through strategies for adapting to the impacts of climate change on coffee production in communities. He will also take us through an overview of tools and techniques for building resilience in the coffee sector, and some case studies of successful adaptation strategies in different regions. And after these presentations, we'll have, after each presentation, actually, we have allocated time for question and answers. So you can ask your questions during that allocated time. And also we have allocated another session for question and answer. And if you have any additional questions based on the 3 presentations. Then finally, we'll have a closing remark and finish the webinar. Thank you so much. And I just have some housekeeping items also. So please mute your mics when you are not speaking. When you want to speak, just click on the microphone icon and you can speak. If you have any questions or comments, please put it in the Q&A box, or you can put it in the comments area, and we'll do that during the Q&A session. And as you all know, this webinar will be recorded and it will be made available through our channel, Austria's YouTube channel, and also the project website in the future. So sorry, my name is Alamu Tasfay. I'm leading the knowledge and learning unit of this project. Yes, so next I'll take you directly to our first presenter, who is Dr. Zanaba. Mickey, can you put the slide, or Dr. Zanaba, you can put the slide yourself.
Okay, thank you, Alamu. Thanks for the organizer for let me share my screen if it is possible from on my side. Now it is okay.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you, the organizers and Dr. Alamu, for inviting me to present this paper on this webinar. The title, which is Women, Coffee and the Climate Change, Women's Empowerment for Socio-Ecological Resilience of Coffee Value Chain. And the climate change and the coffee are building resilience and the sustainability in the changing world. And I am, as you see in the slide, my name is Zanaba Makonnen, working in Ethiopian forestry development. Is that audible, okay?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Continue.
Okay, just to begin understanding the impact of climate change on coffee. So first, as you know, climate change trends, what look like climate change trend is a global context. So globally, land surface temperature has increased by 0.1 degrees Celsius per decade, starting from 1850 to 2022, according to the information of NOA. So the rainfall also since 1901, global precipitation also increased at an average rate of 0.05 inches per decade. And when we come to Africa, surface temperature or near surface temperature has increased by 0.5 degrees Celsius or more during the last 50 to 100 years, according to this author. And the rainfall over the last 3 decades also decreased by around 50% in the context of Africa. When it comes to the Ethiopian case, the mean annual temperature has increased by about 1.3 degrees Celsius between 1960 and 2006 at an average rate of 0.28 per decade and 0.3 per decade in the southwestern regions. And an overall reduction in rainfall of around 10% across Ethiopia also observed between 1948 and 2006. So this indicates that the global temperature from the global level to the local to the national level, climate trend shows us an increasing in temperature. The rainfall also shows fluctuation, more or less. The rainfalls in some areas it may increase, in the other area it may decrease, but the temperature throughout from global level up to the country level, it shows an increasing trend. So the causal factor of climate change trend, as you know, is anthropogenic factors and the natural factors. Mainly anthropogenic factors, the use of fossil fuels as well as deforestation in agriculture contributes the greenhouse gas emissions. So these greenhouse gas emissions have trapped the solar radiation coming to the earth. So the temperature around the Earth's atmosphere are increasing from time to time. So we need to act to limit this temperature and climate change trends as agreed in the Paris Agreement. So world coffee production, as you see, there is a distribution of world coffee production, as you see in the left map, and the harvested area to the right, the case study in 2090. So most of the coffee production, as you see, is in the Brazil, also in Asia, Ethiopia, and also one of the coffee producer countries. The production per 1,000 ton, as you see, the darker area shows almost 1,500 tons per hectare, which is more productive, while the lighter area shows less than 25,000 tons per hectare. So productivity, as you saw on the left part, the productivity of the coffee is more higher for the darker areas, and the cultivate, the harvested area also, the darker, the green, the darker green one shows as the more harvested area in thousands of hectares. So as you see also, Ethiopia and Indonesia and the Brazil are the most harvested areas in the global coffee productions. So this is the map which shows where how the production of coffee is per hectare basis in the area of harvested as the area of harvested areas. So as you see, the area and the harvested production are more or less it seems correlated to each other, because as you see, the production area and the production also shows a more or less corresponding to each other, directly correlated to each other. So impacts of climate change on coffee, as you see, coffee Arabica is a dominant coffee, which is in the world market. So optimum air for this coffee Arabica, the optimum air temperature requirement is considered to be from 18 to 21 degrees Celsius. And the photosynthetic rate is reduced at temperature above 20 degrees Celsius. So if the temperature is increasing from the requirement of coffee Arabica, so the photosynthetic rate of this plant, this agricultural and economic plants, have been reduced when the temperature is above 25 degrees Celsius. So exposure to temperatures greater than 30 degrees Celsius depresses growth and can result in the abnormalities within the leaves, within the stems, and the flowers or plants, reducing coffee yield. This increasing temperature will lead to the reduction in the coffee yields, because the photosynthetic rate of coffee will reduce when the temperature is becoming higher and higher, which is the global temperature, and the climate change is increasing from time to time. So the coffee production is more impacted by climate change. When you see impact of climate change on coffee, as you see high temperature, above 23 degrees Celsius, fruit ripening accelerates, leading to progressive quality loss. This is a direct impact on the coffee tree. Indirectly also, pests and diseases may increase. Above 25 degrees Celsius, photosynthesis rate is reduced. And when it becomes 30 degrees Celsius, tree growth is depressed. So high temperature can cause leaf, stem, and flower abnormalities and abortion. So the flowers may not grow into normal growth. So the coffee production will be affected. Heavy rain, hail, and a strong wind also cause tree damage, increase fruit fall, as well, especially near the harvest time. Indirectly also, soil erosion has increased, landslide with increase. So this also indirectly impact coffee production and growth, leading to damage to roads and other infrastructure, increase also costs, so that it is also impacts the transportation and the marketing of coffee products. Also, there is also intermittent and unseasonal rain also impacts greater flowering frequency. This indirectly possibly increase on some diseases. Post-harvest drying of creates post-harvest drying difficulty. So it leads into the growth as well as the marketing of coffee production. Prolonged rain also may reduce flowering, affects fruit set, and lower photosynthetic rate. So that indirectly increased humidity may favor some fungal diseases, so that it can affect the coffee fruits, so that they also impact the productivity of this important commercial plant. Also prolonged drought, as the drought is increasing, so it leads the fruit abortion, flower abortion, so that indirectly causes production and the productivity of coffee will be reduced. So when climate change and the coffee production, we look at the production level, the average coffee production will drop to 145 kgs per hectare by 2060 due to increasing night temperature. So this is a study which is conducted in Tanzania. With 1 degree Celsius rise in the mean temperature, there is greatly an average loss of 160 kg per hectare of green coffee in East Africa, coffee producing countries, including Ethiopia. So potential yield of Arabica coffee is expected to decrease by about 25% at the end of this 21st century in Brazil and also in other global contexts. So the simulated impacts of climate change on Ethiopia, the specialty coffee, when are you observed in Ethiopia by 2030, 50 and 70 and 2090. This study shows that coffee production, impact of climate change on the suitability of Ethiopian specialty coffee varies from place to place, particularly if you see the second, this part B, graph B, which is the Harar specialty coffee is more or less impacted by the, in the 2090s, almost there is no less of productivity for the Harar coffee specialty coffee. As usual for the others, for the combined effect, there is more or less in some parts of the country, there are some increase of suitability areas and there are fluctuations. Particularly, this is for the specialty coffee, which is modified varieties, but for the original coffee, the study shows that by 2090, almost no suitability area will prevail as it is continued as business as usual. But these specialty coffees, as they are improved varieties, the areas of suitability may be increased. For example, if you see for the Nakamte specialty coffee, most of them there are some available space even in the 2090s. So the Limu also there are some few spaces in the 2090 for the Sidamo and the Irga Chafe specialty coffees. Climate change has its area of suitability is more or less makes narrow the space for coffee production and productivity. Particularly, the Harar coffee has been very low suitability area in the 2090s. When you see climate change in the coffee distribution, as you said previously, change in bioclimatic envelope of the distribution of indigenous Arabica coffee with respect to climate change. When you use this diagrammatical representation, when the temperature is normal, that is when you see the green part, a species bioclimatic envelope with no temperature change. We assume that this is the green part is normal temperature. The suitability of the area suitability for a coffee is more larger, but when the temperature increased to 1 degree Celsius, the area suitability has been decreased and the purple, as you see in the purple area. When the temperature is increased by 2 degrees Celsius on average, the species bioclimatic envelope with 2 degree temperature with the area of suitability for coffee reduces by that amount. And when the degree Celsius increased by 3 degrees Celsius, the species suitability area for coffee is very narrow and minimal. So this decrease in coffee growing suitability area due to climate change influences the world coffee market and increase the price of coffee, substitution of coffee by other crops because the area of suitability for coffee become narrower. This is a schematic representation that is designed to show you how the temperature increase will affect the coffee suitability area. So this results in the substitution of coffee by other crops. And finally, if the bioclimatic envelope become narrower, so finally, it may also lead to the extinction of the coffee biodiversity, which is very endangered unless and otherwise a remedial problem, a remedial solution have been taken previously. So as the worst scenario under the influence of accelerated global climate change in Ethiopia, the indigenous coffee maybe lose suitability area in 2080s. So this is a very high risk that needs to be taken action. Okay. So this area decrease of area sustainability will result in the substitution of the coffee plant by other crops, or it is finally lead to the extinction of the coffee biodiversity. So climate change and the coffee distribution, when suitability coffee areas, coffee at the end of this century, as you shows this part of the red part as more less suitability areas. This is the distribution. This the boxes shows the distribution of coffee in Ethiopia for the specialty coffees. So increasing temperature affects the coffee production, particularly its suitability area. In some other places, it also creates new coffee producing area, but the concern is that this specialty coffee may be grown in the upper, in the highland areas of the country, but the indigenous one may not continue to grow to the highland, so it leads to the extinction of the indigenous coffee Arabica, unless and otherwise you take these specialty coffees. So the climate change and the coffee distribution, in Ethiopian case, there are 3 zones: West Rift Valley zones, which is the northern part, which including the Amara, the Benishangul Gumuz, and some of Wallagga and Elubabor. So as you see, there is across the periods, there is marginal suitability area increase, while there is also fair increase in the suitability of these specialty coffees throughout the Ethiopian context. But the small coffee areas have been prevail, as is we show the Harar specialty coffee is particularly susceptible to lose its suitability area in the 2070s to 2099, is the end of century, that is. So these are also the coffee growing zones of, for example, as you see here, there are unsuitable areas. This is also from suitable to good, from marginal to excellent. This, as you see, the Bale and the RCR, most of the area becomes unsuitable in the 2099. So the Harar and the Bale specialty coffees, the West Hararge, it becomes very dangerous. The suitable areas for this specialty coffee also very minimal. So climate change and the coffee quality, as I said before, drought increases in temperature and the rainfall fluctuation, it increases pests. For example, coffee berry beetles and diseases like coffee leaf rust damages the coffee growth. Flower and fruit abortion, this drought and increasing temperature also allows to flower and fruit abortion. So that there is reduction in coffee quality. So increased bean defect, reduced berry growth, and acceleration of ripening frequently. So when is the rainfall fluctuation, there is acceleration of ripening of the beans of the coffee from time to time, so that which is ineffective. It is not fully grown to maturity. So this leads to reduction in coffee yield and the quality. So this also an impact on the coffee market and the value chain as well. So this drought and increasing temperature, which is results from the climate change, has a more greater impact on the coffee quality as well as coffee production as well as in the marketing. If the quality of coffee is reduced, it is known that in the marketing of coffee also reduced as such. So coffee growers and the climate change. So several case studies in Ethiopia, in Brazil, Uganda, and Central America, El Salvador shows that climate change has affected the livelihood of coffee growing farmers and the communities by reducing the yield and the quantity of coffee, thereby reducing their income. In this case, women growers are particularly impacted most, because in the field level, it is those of women growers more involved in the coffee farming, starting from the nursery development. So climate change has impacted women's particularly more higher than the men's. So this is the first section, and thank you. If you have questions, suggestions, and comments, and welcome. And I will pass to Alamu. Thank
I
you.
can hear you. I can hear you. Thank you, Dr. Zanaba. I was just trying to join through another computer.
Yeah, this is the first section of my presentation.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Sí.
Okay. So let's continue. Thank you, Dr. Zanaba, for that insightful presentation. You have provided a comprehensive overview of the impact of climate change on coffee, starting with an analysis of global and African climate trends and their specific implications for coffee production in Ethiopia. You have also highlighted the ways in which climate change is affecting coffee, from altering the sustainability of specialty coffee to changing the bioclimatic envelope of indigenous Arabica coffee. He has also touched on, discussed the impact of climate change on coffee quality and shared case studies of coffee growers in various countries who are already feeling the effects of climate change. Overall, his presentation, Dr. Zanaba's presentation, highlights the urgent need to address the challenges of climate change in the coffee sector and to find innovative solutions that can promote sustainability and resilience in the face of these challenges. And thank you so much for your presentation. This is the first part of his presentation. So if you have any questions, you said that some areas would be suitable for coffee production and other areas would be unsuitable in Ethiopia in the future due to climate change. What will be the balance? So that we have one question by Damallash Alam. So now the floor is open for question and answers. Please put your questions in the Q&A area, and Dr. Zanaba will respond to that. So Dr. Zanaba, you have a question in the Q&A area, and it says, you said that some areas will be suitable for coffee production and other areas will be unsuitable in Ethiopia in the future due to climate change. What will be the balance?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, as I said, some areas maybe with special varieties, which is specialty coffee varieties. Some areas which are not suitable before are becoming an opportunity to have improved the coffee varieties, which is a specialty coffee. While the most balance is to make coffee production is climate smart. Unless and otherwise you are making coffee production climate smart, if you continue as business as usual, we may lose all of the suitable areas in the future. So that the balance is making in the coffee production and the productivity, including through the value chains of the coffee production, including the marketing chain. So coffee production at the farm level should become climate smart by using, for example, irrigation, using mulching, different technological practices which maintain the coffee production as productive as possible, as well as reducing the emission of greenhouse gases along the coffee value chain. So that the balance will be making a climate smart coffee production and the marketing chain development, maybe reduces the risks of coffee production and increases the suitability, may keep the coffee in the suitable areas of its suitability area of natural suitability.
There is a follow-up question from Damallash Alam still to you, Dr. Zanaba.
Okay.
It says, is it negative or positive in area coverage by coffee if potential suitable areas will be planted? So if you understand this question, otherwise let me unmute Damallash so that he can ask the question. Is the question clear?
Yeah, it is clear.
Okay. Please.
As I said in my presentation, for some of the specialty coffees, for example, for the Nakamte specialty coffee, the impact is, the study shows that it is positive. There are some more suitability areas for the Western area for the Nakamte specialty coffees. For the other case, when the go to the Bali and the East Hararghe cases, particularly the Harar specialty issues, the impact is more negative. We may lose all of the coffee suitability areas in the 2090s for Harar specialty coffee. So the balance is more in some areas, for example, in the western parts. This is not for the indigenous. If you keep as business as usual, that is growing, we continue the indigenous coffee, Arabica coffee, by 2090, we lose all of the coffee areas as in a whole in Ethiopia. But if you improve the specialty coffees, like specialty coffees of Nakamte, specialty of Naibga Cafe, specialty coffees of Harar, particularly for the Harar specialty coffee case, we may lose the suitable areas in 2090s. So the balance, the suitability is in some areas for the Nakamte case, it is positive. But in general, if you continue as business as usual, the general impact is negative.
Excellent. So is satisfied, Dr. Zanaba, Damalash is satisfied with your response. Any other questions or comments from other participants before we go to the next session? Okay, thank you, Dr. Zanaba, for the first presentation. Now we'll go to the second presentation. Over to you, Dr. Zanaba.
Okay. Okay, is that visible?
Yes, it is. Continue, please.
Okay, this is my second part of my presentation. Okay, as we said in the first section, there need to be strategies for mitigating climate change in the coffee sector. So there are potential coffee adaptation strategies to climate change as well. So relocation of coffee farmers will be a key component in building resilience for the Ethiopian coffee economy. As I said, some of the specialty coffees are relocating to the highland areas, but the issue is that the indigenous coffee Arabica may not do this unless and otherwise we have taken a specialty coffee in variety improvement. So this may be done through use of irrigation, shade management, and mulching, tracing, and pruning, which enables to alter air and soil temperature and moisture so that to provide a buffer against inadequate growing of condition and extreme weather events. So we have to change, as I said before, to balance. We made a coffee smart coffee production, which reduces the greenhouse gas emissions, as well as improve coffee production and productivity as well. So potential coffee adaptations measures as a strategy, which also reduces the greenhouse gas impact from the coffee value chains. We can use key adaptation measures and their implication. If you use irrigation, this may boost or maintain soil water availability for coffee plant and highly effective means of improving yield and quality, so that as well as it increases the coffee productivity as well as quality and reduces greenhouse gas emissions. So good irrigation enabled Arabica coffee to successfully grow in places that would otherwise be unsuitable to low rainfall areas. So the other is shade management. This shade management improves coffee grow condition by reducing daytime air and soil temperature and then increasing humidity and soil moisture. The other, it helps to counter the negative effect of heavy rain and coffee flower protection from heavy raindrops and drying winds. And the other is mulching, which helps to preserve soil moisture and decrease soil temperature, which reduce evapotranspiration. And the mulching also helps to increase soil fertility and surpass weeds and improve rainfall penetration into the ground. The other maybe terracing leads to destructive improvement in soil quality. This terracing, example, increase in the depth of soil and the fertility. And it also helps to reduce in water runoff and the soil erosion so that the coffee plants may not be damaged. And the agricultural chemical may not be lead to the other environment so that reduces emission of nitrous oxide, which comes from the application of fertilizer, for example. So the other is pruning. It improves coffee harvest by maximizing cropping potential and reinvigorating old and unproductive trees. So this pruning may help to remove the old ones which is affected by disease and pest. It also helps to improve water use efficiency in the coffee plants. So the other is improve variety development, as I said in my first section. This variety development may help to withstand the newly changed climate in previously unsuitable coffee growing areas. It also provides high yield so as to compensate the production losses due to climate change if unproductive coffee varieties were used. The other is very important one is which also increases the marketability and tradability of coffee as well as improves the growth of coffee is fair trade coffee. Fair trade coffee is important to the market chain of coffee. Fair trade can be traced the impact of climate change throughout the coffee supply chain by supporting and advocating for farmers who are facing the social, environmental, and economic implications of climate change. Fair trade also gives farmers a variety of channels and platforms to tackle climate change, which helps to shape sustainable supply chains so that this coffee fair trade also results in the reduction of greenhouse gas emission along the supply chain of coffee marketing as well as production. It also with prevention and mitigation strategies as the heart of fair trade environmental standard, for example. So these environmental standards with prevention and mitigation strategies as the heart of fair trade environment standard. Farmers are benefiting this fair trade standard. The other is also farmers are already increasing resilience to climate change. The other is the fair trade minimum price in the premium. If farmers are involved in the fair trade, so the minimum price given to the farmers may help to inject this price to invest their coffee production in the productivity so that they develop a sustainable climate smart coffee production, because even if there is damage from climate change impact, if farmers are involved in the fair trade minimum price, they can compensate the damage from this minimum price in the premium. So it also connects networks and the knowledge. If farmers are connected or organized in the fair trade, for example, in Ethiopia, there is Oromia Coffee Farmers Union, in Sidama Coffee Farmers Union are connected to this fair trade. So this fair trading involvement make farmers to invest in their coffee investment so that they can adopt a climate smart coffee production, so that it gives also governance, they make them to the global market so that they can benefit in the global market. So this fair trade involvement of farmers through organization of different coffee unions is important in climate change adaptation as well as mitigation strategies in the coffee supply chain. when the potential coffee adaptation, which choice of coffee system as the farm level, this is a study from Uganda by Oxfam, shows that when we plot level function, yield quality, yield quantity, we as you show, yield quantity will increase when you use a full sun monocrops to the forest system, while the yield quantity decreases from the use of the forest system towards the use of full sun monocrop coffee plantation. So the system of coffee farming at the farm levels shows a variation from full sun monocrop coffee plantation to forest system for coffee plantation. The darker part shows a high. For example, yield quality at full sun monocrops yield quantity is higher, but yield quantity as the forest system is very low. While in the case of yield quality, it is low for the full sun monocrop types, while it is higher for the forest system, and also external input use also high for the full sun monocrop coffee plantation, while less as the forest system. So it varies from the system of coffee system from the farm level. Nitrate cycling also high for the forest system, while low as the full monocrop coffee plantation. So these trade-offs should be compensated as a balance, because when you focus only the yield quantity, full sun monocrops may give us more yield quantity, while the yield quality is less. So we have to compensate and make a synergies between these trade-offs. When you go from the full sun monocrop coffee planting to the forest system, we need to make synergies between these trade-offs. So coffee suitability area, as we saw when we make interventions, the upper circle shows that coffee suitability area in different periods. The upper part of this shows when we make coffee interventions, the suitability areas in kilometers. Maybe when you make interventions, the suitability areas are more or less increasing. While no intervention, if you continue, the lower part of the pie chart shows that without interventions, the area of suitability for this coffee suitability in Ethiopia decreases from time to time, particularly in the 2090, the suitability area become very less, as I said in my previous slide. So climate smart coffee production and suitability, this increases productivity. On the other hand, enhances resilience to climate risk and reduces or removes greenhouse gas emissions. So what climate smart coffee, when you say climate smart coffee, it should have follow these three pillars to make production sustainability. So it's increasing productivity. At the same time, we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions so that mitigation potential has been reduced from the coffee sector, as well as enhances the resilience to climate risk. Because if there is increased productivity, the farmers will increase their income, so that if climate change loses other crops, so that this increased productivity will sustain the livelihood of coffee producing farmers, as well as decreases greenhouse gas emission for a mitigation perspective. So with demand for coffee is expected to triple by 2050, increasing global demand for environmentally friendly products has pushed a rapid acceleration of sustainability initiatives among coffee producers and retailers. Because demand is increasing for coffee, so the coffee supply chain as well as the value chain could be sustainable and become environmentally as well as socially become sustainable to meet the demand for to reduce the impacts of mitigation potential of coffee sectors. So as you see in the graph, the total millions of 60 kg bags produced starting from 1990 to 2070, the coffee production shows an increasing trend. So if coffee production shows an increasing trend, the production has increased from time to time because of the increasing demand. So the coffee has to become more sustainable. We need to understand how and where greenhouse gas emission emitted through the production cycle. We need to know where is the greenhouse gas emission are on through the production cycle, starting from the field level up to the export level. Where is the emission of greenhouse gases in the coffee production cycle? How emission can be mitigated? We have to develop a strategy how to mitigate the greenhouse gas emission and how environmental impact of coffee production can be reduced. As I said, climate smart coffee should do this particular impacts through sustainability production along the value chain. Carbon footprint along the value chain of green coffee from Costa Rica shows that, for example, the greenhouse gas emissions are 20% of the greenhouse gas emission in the coffee sector is at the farm level. Then at the central mill level, it is 30%. At the exportation side is 5%. This is in the country. So then roasting will take 40% of the emission from the coffee sector for these Costa Rica case studies. So the others are starting from packing, and the others will be taken out of the country, in the other exported to the other country. So distribution takes 3% of the emissions, and grinding and packaging will take 6%. Consumption takes the 46% of the greenhouse gas emission in the coffee value chain. Then disposal contributes 3%. So this shows us where to act, because in the consumption level, according to this graph, we have to act as a consumption stage to reduce the greenhouse gas emission of coffee value chain. So as we act more action, we make coffee supply chain more sustainable, more climate smart, by acting as the consumption level according to this case study and as the farm level, because more of the greenhouse gas emission are taken as the consumption level, so that we have to reduce the greenhouse gas impact or the mitigation of the greenhouse gases as the consumption level as well as the farm level. So case study also greenhouse gas total emission and the removals for the Daterra coffee farms in the Brazil. For this shows that the blue color shows the emission from nitrogen fertilizer, liming, fuel consumption during the farming and the transport case, and pruning residues and electricity. All these are emitting greenhouse gases in the coffee production. While carbon sequestered in the soil will sink carbon, and the carbon also is sequestered in the plant biomass. This is the average emission becomes, when you subtract the balance, it becomes negative 2.7 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per hectare per year. So this coffee farm is a climate smart coffee production, because the emission is balanced by the sinks in the coffee production. So this climate smart coffee production will reduce greenhouse gas emission, so that it also plays a great role in the climate change strategies, which is laid in the Paris Agreement. At the same time, it increases production, the productivity of the coffee, so it sustains the livelihood of the farmer. So this type of coffee production, which balances the emission through the coffee, the sequestration of the carbon in the soil as well as in the plant biomass, maintains the greenhouse gas emissions to remain in the soil as well as in the plants. So case study continues. Also there is also a case study done in the Tanzania on soil moisture toll, combined dry mulch. This combination of dry mulch and the cover crops is promising since this ensures a continuous supply of mulch material. When the applied dry mulch has been decomposed, plant cover crops can be slashed that the soil is well covered with mulching material. So this treatment shows that for the first treatment, they take 6 treatments, the 3 with mulching, the other without mulching. So the first observation from this case study shows that coffee trees standing on the mulch plot look healthier and carry more and healthier cherries compared to the rest, which are not mulched. So this also improves the coffee productivity, also decreases the mitigation, the carbon emission potential from the coffee production. Okay, emission, when we see carbon sinks, agricultural practice, what amount of carbon fixed per hectare, and the tons of carbon dioxide fixed or reduced per ton are showing that. For example, increased biomass sequestration in the shade, it in agricultural practice, enhanced shade with additional shade trees, the carbon dioxide per hectare may be from 0 up to 7.3 kg of in the Ugandan case study, while the carbon sequestration fixed or reduced is from 0 up to 21. So these two will make a balance between the emission and the reduced carbon, become a balance. These carbon agricultural practices will help to reduce and the greenhouse gas emission from the coffee production sector, as this case study shows. So making agricultural practice as climate smart as possible will reduce the greenhouse gas emission from the coffee production sector, as well as increases production, the productivity of the coffee sector, so that those stakeholders, including from the farmers, the women involved in the coffee production and the marketing, will benefit from the marketing chain, as well as farming communities will be environmentally friendly. So finally, when we see the women coffee in the climate change noxious, women are more vulnerable to climate change stress and the shocks than men, because women are constrained to access and the control of livelihood assets such as farmlands, natural forests. So women are these are the indirect impacts. With this, when amalgamated with the climate change impact, it affects women more than men. So fewer livelihood strategy opportunities, women depend on fewer livelihood opportunities than men. And women also has limited access to structures and decision-making processes. They also, women have time constraints, lower education, and the cultural norms, particularly in the African context. Women are constrained by several cultural norms and have also lower educations and also time constraint, because they pass most of their time for household workers. Most of the household burdens are put on women, so that these are constrained. They will invest less time to the agricultural investments. So household work burden, irrespective of contributing up to 70 to 20% of the manual labor in coffee production, is taken over by women. But in the upper value chain, when you go in the marketing at the domestic level, or whether in the export level, where most of the benefits are there, because in the marketing, women's involvement is only 6%. This inequality should be balanced, because up to 90% of the field work, manual labor, particularly in African context, is carried by women. But when you go to the higher value chain for the marketing, in the domestic market, as well as in the export, women involvement is only 6%. So there is a need to work to balance this inequality so that women more involved in the value chain, which are more of the benefit are there. Okay, women coffee climate change noxious continues. When we see from this women employment in the coffee sector, when you see in the field work, it is typically about 70% of the field work is done by women, and the harvest, 70% of the harvest is done by women, but trading in the country, which is 10%, sorting, 75% taken by women, export, only 10% is will be conducted by women, and others such as coffee certification in laboratory exercises in laboratory certification workers, the share of women is 20%. When you go to the women's ownership in the coffee sector, we see land use for coffee production, it is only 20%. On average, that women's ownerships for coffee sector, land use, coffee production, including use rights. Coffee, when harvested, only 50% of the women are involved. Coffee, when traded domestically, only 10% are involved. Companies in the coffee sector, export, laboratory, and certification, where the most of the benefits are there, women also contribute only 10%. While the work, which is the manual part, which is more burden, women are taking the lion's share of the burden in the field level. While in the export, in the marketing of in the domestic level, as well as in the export level, women's involvement are very low. So we need governments, nation should work to empower women equality in the coffee marketing as well as in the value chain of coffee sector. This is my second session, the end of my second session, and thank you. I am just stop here for questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zanaba, for this insightful presentation. So the presentation has highlighted a range of strategies for mitigating the impact of climate change on the coffee sector. Dr. Zanaba, he discussed potential adaptation strategies such as irrigation, shade management, mulching, terracing, and pruning, as well as the use of climate-smart technologies and practices. He has also shared a case study of climate-smart coffee production, which demonstrated how these strategies can be implemented in practice. In addition, he touched on the important nexus between women coffee and climate change, and the need to ensure that women coffee farmers are supported and empowered to participate in the efforts to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Overall, the presentation underscored the importance of taking action to address climate change in the coffee sector and highlighted some promising strategies for doing so. And thank you so much for that, Dr. Zanaba. So we have 3 questions in the QA section. First is by Ogesa Tashoma, and this question is, mitigation measures and adaptation measures, are they the same? He needs clarity on that.
Okay, thank you. Of course, adaptation and mitigation measures are the same side of the same coin. One contributes for the others, because more of the mitigation are the mitigation efforts help to adapt the adaptation ones, because sustainable agriculture and climate smart coffee production mitigates the emission of greenhouse gas. As I try to show in the case studies, the mitigation part of the coffee production will be balanced by the coffee, the climate smart coffee production, by storing the soil, the carbon in the soil as well as in the biomass, so that the mitigation part also plays a.
So Dr. Zanaba had power interruption. until he joins back. He'll join us back. He's trying to join us back. There are a number of questions for him here. I can read some of the questions, and if any one of you can respond to it, then you can respond to it. Okay. While Dr. Zanaba is joining us, I will call upon Wubalam, Dr. Wubalam. Can you say a little bit about the importance of this this presentation on mitigation adaptation in terms of the research project that we are engaged in? Dr. Wubalam.
Can you hear?
Sorry to quit you. Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Thank you, Alemo. I think we can proceed, but in any case, both presentations of Dr. Zannevar are very relevant. He gave us very insightful presentations of the status of climate change impacts on the coffee sector at global and the Ethiopian level. So this is very important for the DESIRA project we are implementing in Yayu Forest. So I have also seen before this webinar the same but an alarming information about the climate change and coffee sector. That was, for instance, the most alarming negative impact of climate change on coffee productivity in sub-Saharan Africa has been identified as being severe and need extra effort to prepare for future in order to maintain sustainable and productive coffee. Global warming, deforestation, disease, pests, and contributing to the decline. And scientists warn that without conservation, monitoring, and seed preservation, etc. I think most of the information I gathered, Dr. Zannevar has clearly and mentioned them. Therefore, with the series of presentations that we are seeing and the next presentation of Javier, we will understand the status and the impact of climate change in coffee, the strategies of mitigation climate change in the sector, adaptation to climate change is the sector as well, best practices of Colombia that we have seen, and hopefully Javier will tell us best practices, etc. With this will help us to introduce to our coffee forest. I think at the end of this presentation, we will have important information, the status, challenges, etc. So with this, researchers, extension partner, okay, we can hear you.
Okay,
so
yeah.
I think at the end of the webinar, the message is we are in an alarming situation. So we cannot wait as a business as usual scenario. We have to join us, researchers, development partners, both national and international, to save our green golden resource that is coffee. Thank you, Alam.
Thank you, Dr. Wubalam. Dr. Zanaba is back. We have some questions in the QA area. If you can respond to them briefly, because we need to go to the next presentation. We are running out of time. So Alan Seiferede, she's asking, you said that relocations of coffee farms is one of the options to adapt climate change. But what do you think about the quality of coffee? Because coffee quality is more related to coffee shade.
Yeah, as I said, this relocation of the coffee or to the other unsuitable areas for previously, we go to with the specialty coffees with improved varieties, and we also go to with the appropriate planting of shade trees. We go to along. We cannot farm coffee without a shade. So when we expand these specialty coffees for the previously unsuitable area, we will not only plant the coffees along the highland areas. We also plant appropriate coffee shades along these coffee specialty coffees.
Okay, Thank you. The other question is, which coffee type contributes more for gases or carbon emissions? That's by Futsum from ECT, Ethiopia Coffee Tea Authority.
Okay, there is no particular, and it is not, emission is not depending on the coffee species, but it is depends on which coffee type is more cultivated more and what is the agricultural practices, how the process along the value chain, as well as the farming practices, how it is climate smart. That matters for the emissions, but it does not depend. In the global context, it is more than 60% of the coffee production is Arabica coffee. Maybe that is not the species that may contribute, because it is wide varied cultivation that may contribute to the greenhouse emission, but it does not depend on the species of Arabica coffee, because it is cultivated more in the global context. More of 60% of the global cultivation is Arabica coffee. If you correlate that with this, we cannot say that Arabica coffee is contributing to greenhouse gas emission more. But the type of processing from the field level and up to the export level, how to make this value chains or the supply chain climate smart, how we make it is environmentally friendly, but it does not depend on the species of the coffee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Another question on what do you recommend as a solution? I think for this question, we might need Futsum, it is from Futsum, ECT. We might need to have, actually we'll have another webinar through this community of practice, where we'll be discussing about women empowerment, women economic empowerment, the challenges of women in the coffee sector and so on. So we can answer, this is a very big question. It needs its own session, but if you want to respond to it, you can respond to it. What he's saying is, what do you recommend as a solution for those vulnerable women due to climate change?
Yeah, this requires a government strategy, so that the government should organize those vulnerable women into cooperatives, so that they may involve in the coffee market chain, so that there are also exemplary coffee unions in Ethiopia. For example, the Sidama Coffee Union. I don't know how many female farmers are involved in that union. I have no information. Maybe independently organizing, empowering women into coffee producer union may resolve the conflict, and it requires a government strategy to involve, to participate women in the coffee investment, so that they, as I said, the involvement of women in the marketing, which is domestic market, and as well as in the international market, the sharing is very small. So there is a need to empower women by training, by organizing them into cooperatives, so that we may resolve the problem of those vulnerable women.
Thank you. Another question is by Damallash Alam. He's saying that his question is on shade increases coffee quality, but decreases production. How can we strike a balance between the two to maximize profits? That's what he's saying.
Yeah, I also mentioned on my presentation, shade is one of, shade management is one of important in the coffee production, because coffee cannot grow in the open sun, because when the temperature high, it leads to abortion of flowers and the fruit. So we need to manage the coffee appropriately. The crown coverage should not be beyond 30%, so that we can manage the coffee shade management. The coffee shade should be, the crown coverage of the shade tree should not be more than 30%. If that is more than 30%, it may block sunlight reaching to the coffee production. It is also diminishes the photosynthetic rate. So what I said that in my presentation, we have to manage the coffee shade management. So such that by managing the crown coverage to the minimum of 30, to the maximum of 30%, so that they become, it also keeps the balance between quality and the productivity.
Thank you. How can we, another question from Damallash Alam, it is on how can we reduce greenhouse gas emission at coffee consumption level?
Yeah, as the coffee consumption level, for example, when we process coffee consumption, we may not dispose the remaining parts. We may reuse, for example, the coffee husks during processing. When the coffee preparations, the remnants should be used again into compost, into briquette making. For example, the coffee husk is produced into other usable form, into briquette making, used for energy. Also, the waste material has to be prepared into the compost form, so that may increase the production and productivity of coffee. So we have to design how to our way of disposal in the coffee supply chain.
Thank you. The last question by Lemlem Abebe. It's on women and men have different decision, control, and access to resources, and thereby differently affected by climate change and mitigation mechanisms. So as an expert, what do you recommend? I think you have already responded to this one. It needs government intervention, but if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I think it needs government intervention, so that there is a design of policy, how women should be involved, the owners of land. There are some initiative by giving land certificates for both the husband and the wife, so that this is also a good initiative to start with. Where on the land certificate, both the name of the husband and the wife have been written, so it guarantees the land ownership of both women and men. So initiative like this and other initiative in the strategies by the government should be designed to empower women for accessing resources, particularly productive resources such as land, which is also a case in the coffee producers, women and farmers.
Thank you, Dr. Zanaba, for a very excellent and insightful presentation and response to questions from participants. I'm really happy for all that. Thank you. Next, I'll take you to the next presenter, who will be Javier Hoyos from EthioLatinCoffee. Javier, over to you. Mickey, can you put the presentation? Excellent. Now this is in Spanish. We have participants from Colombia and Honduras numbers here with us, and Celia will lead the translation to English. Thank you.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, you can hear.
Muy buenos días para todos. Un saludo muy especial desde Colombia, desde EthioLatinCoffee. Un saludo para todas las personas que nos están acompañando y para todas las personas que hacen parte de este proyecto Mujer, Café y Clima, en asocio con la Agencia de Cooperación Española, el proyecto de CIRA, con la Café y Café, y del cual también hace parte EthioLatinCoffee. Nosotros desde Colombia hemos venido trabajando desde hace mucho tiempo, no solo como EthioLatinCoffee, sino como gremio, y el sector cafetero colombiano hace muchísimos años viene trabajando unos procesos y unos sistemas agroforestales que van encaminados a la mitigación y a la adaptación al cambio y la variabilidad climática. En ese sentido, hay que resaltar un trabajo muy importante que ha hecho la institucionalidad cafetera colombiana en cabeza de la Federación Nacional de Cafeteros a través de EthioLatinCoffee y todas las entidades y todos los departamentos que hacen parte de la federación, donde una de las preocupaciones que se han presentado y que ha sido manifiesta en todo el sentir productivo ha sido precisamente esas alteraciones que se tienen con el clima. Nosotros desde hace ya varios tiempo pues venimos haciendo un trabajo de investigación. No sé por qué no me pasa la presentación, discúlpenme. Discúlpenme cómo hago para que me pase, no sé si soy yo el que la está manejando o la está manejando Alemo. Next, please. Thank you. La pregunta inicial que siempre nos hemos hecho es ¿por qué el cambio y la variabilidad climática? ¿Cuáles han sido esas causas que se han presentado? ¿Y qué podemos hacer para mitigar o solucionar esta situación? Pero sobre todo, ¿cuánto tiempo nos queda? Porque hace muchos años, el Centro Internacional de Agricultura Tropical, ubicado en Palmira, Colombia, ejecutó un trabajo de investigación que duró varios años, y hace exactamente 12 años salieron los resultados de ese estudio. Y en este estudio manifestaron que hacia el año 2050, las zonas cafeteras del mundo tendrían que subir su cota mínima de altura. En este momento, en promedio, la cota mínima de altura está en 1.300 metros sobre el nivel del mar. Hoy, esa cota mínima de altura se supone debería estar alrededor de los 1.500, pero al 2050 y en el ritmo de cambio que hemos tenido, desafortunadamente este proceso ha sido muy agresivo. ¿Cuánto tiempo nos queda? Realmente creo que nos queda menos de los 27 años en los cuales está programado esta meta final. Debemos empezar a tomar unas decisiones y hacer unos cambios que tienen que ser contundentes y tienen que empezar lo más pronto posible. Y para poder llegar a esta solución, obviamente tenemos que empezar todos, y esto debería ser proyecto de ley a nivel mundial, y que no solamente sean los ODS, sino que cada país prácticamente genere una obligación para tomar estas medidas y ser más drásticos, porque el tiempo se acorta cada vez más y los procesos evolutivos naturales no son tan rápidos como uno quisiera. ¿Qué lo ha causado? Más que qué lo ha causado es quiénes lo hemos causado. Lo hemos generado las malas prácticas en búsqueda de una palabra que desafortunadamente me ha tocado escucharla ya un par de veces en este webinar, en búsqueda de altísimas productividades. Yo creo que aquí tenemos que pensar menos en la productividad y más en la producción sostenible. Si nosotros seguimos pensando en productividad, como se ha manejado a nivel mundial por una economía global, considero que vamos a seguir destruyendo los sistemas productivos que se tienen, no solamente en café, yo diría que en todos. Next, please. Entre más sucede estos procesos de cambio climático, más se evidencian los estragos que se están causando hoy en día. Principalmente porque está fomentándose y se sigue fomentando el monocultivo, en este caso de café. Sabemos que existen muchos países que tienen aún una filosofía de agricultura con producción altamente productivista. Y esa es la que ha generado una presión sobre los sistemas productivos, sobre el medio ecosistémico, y esta es una de las principales causas de esa alta frecuencia, alta intensidad de estas condiciones meteorológicas extremas. Cada vez escuchamos que las lluvias son más fuertes, las granizadas son más frecuentes y más agresivas. Los huracanes, como este huracán que ustedes ven en la imagen, cada vez es más fuerte. Las inundaciones cada vez son más frecuentes y de mayor envergadura en términos de área. Los incendios forestales que se presentan cada vez nos preocupan más. Si ustedes recuerdan, hace aproximadamente 2 años, en el marco de la pandemia, en Brasil se presentaron unos incendios forestales que fueron altamente agresivos. Las tormentas de arena que se presentan en las zonas desérticas son también muy fuertes. Eso significa que seguimos causando un problema que es cada vez más agresivo y que no hemos tenido la conciencia suficiente para detener estos impactos. Next, please. Como tal, hemos vivido algunos efectos como los que causó el verano hace un par de años en El Salvador, donde no solamente las afectaciones climáticas actúan sobre el cultivo de café, causando este tipo de paisajes. Se presentaron unos ataques de problemas fitosanitarios bastante fuertes, donde hubo pérdidas económicas muy, pero muy importantes. Hoy El Salvador está en un proceso de recuperación económica que va de la mano con algunas estrategias de adaptación a sistemas productivos agrosostenibles que vienen recuperando el país y que vienen mejorando algunas condiciones, no solamente productivas, sino comerciales. Pero ese era el panorama que se veía hace muy poco tiempo en las zonas productivas cafetaleras de El Salvador y como este en muchas otras regiones. Next, please. Perdón. Como estábamos preguntando ahora por las causas, una de las causas más importantes de detrimento de la calidad del ambiente y de la variabilidad y cambio climático que se vienen presentando han sido precisamente las emisiones de los países más desarrollados, entre estos Estados Unidos, la Unión Europea y otros países que están aquí atrás que hacen parte de los países en alto desarrollo. Estos países cada vez aumentan más la producción industrial y esa producción industrial va de la mano con las emisiones de gases de efecto invernadero y sobre todo de CO2. El valor en gigatoneladas anuales es directamente proporcional al desarrollo que cada uno de estos países tiene. Si ustedes ven la imagen, en el año de 1960, los países que más daño afectaban, más emisiones de gas de CO2 emitían, eran Estados Unidos y la Unión Europea. La China y la India estaban rezagados, pero hoy en día ha cambiado un poco. Hoy en día es la China la que tiene unos altos niveles de generación de gases de efecto invernadero. La India va en un crecimiento acelerado. La Unión Europea ha empezado a generar unos cambios positivos en cuanto a dinámicas industriales y los Estados Unidos sigue en una línea constante. No ha sido muy poca la diferencia, pero esto es precisamente relacionado también con el nivel de vida que se vive en cada uno de estos países ricos. Ustedes ven el valor per cápita en toneladas que tienen los Estados Unidos es mayor a la de los otros países. La menor en este sentido es la India, pero en términos generales el valor global cada vez ha estado en crecimiento, aunque ha sido un crecimiento lento. Eso significa que en este ritmo acelerado de crecimiento que tiene el mundo, por estas ansias de poder y de desarrollo, se nos ha olvidado que tenemos que poner un freno y empezar a generar unas estrategias un poco más limitadas que disminuyan ese daño que se presenta en la situación. Next, please. Dentro de los procesos que se han desarrollado en zonas cafeteras latinoamericanas especialmente, se ha vivido algo que se desarrolló desde hace ya unos años. Como información histórica se tiene que en países productores de café, en Asia y en África, la utilización de los árboles como sistema de sombrío han sido prácticas ancestrales, donde se han elegido sombras que sin ningún tipo de análisis han utilizado cualquier especie, pero con unas utilidades específicas, madera, combustible o construcción. Básicamente esas han sido como los tres rutas. Se nos olvidó que había que darle alimento a las aves y que el darle alimento a las aves pues traía atrás de sí un equilibrio ecológico, porque si hay aves hay insectos, si hay insectos hay microflora, hay microfauna, hay microorganismos en el suelo, y entonces hay una dinámica ecológica más equilibrada. Pero hemos convertido estos procesos productivos y estos factores en alternativas simplemente económicas. Oh, disculpen. Disculpen. Se salió de la presentación, Elena. Eso. La siguiente, por favor, gracias. Next, please. Como les digo, han sido unos factores económicos básicamente. Entonces, los sistemas agrosostenibles que se han tenido que desarrollar se han definido como unos sistemas y unas tecnologías que permiten el uso de la tierra, permiten hacer más eficiente el uso del espacio, combinando la producción del cultivo de café, en este caso, con otros sistemas, árboles, arbustos, incluso pastos. En algunas regiones del mundo hemos visto combinación de producción de café, por ejemplo, con arroz. Y todo esto ha estado en función del tiempo y el espacio para incrementar y optimizar la producción de forma sostenida, asegurando la alimentación, asegurando la nutrición de la población. En resumen, estos sistemas lo que van a lograr es contribuir a la solución de un problema que es cada vez más recurrente en términos de recursos naturales. En función de los sistemas biológicos y de los sistemas socioeconómicos, hay que cumplir unos equilibrios, y esos equilibrios son los que se permiten a través de los sistemas agroforestales. Voy a compartir con ustedes, next please, unas alternativas que se han venido manejando desde hace unos años en distintas zonas productivas de café en Colombia. Y también unos ejemplos que se han tenido en varias partes en Latinoamérica. Let me please, next. Thanks. Antes de mostrarles el ejemplo, pues hay que tener en cuenta que hay unas terminologías para definir sistemas de producción bajo sistemas de sombra. ¿Cómo quiero yo hacer este sistema? ¿Va a ser un sistema productor-protector, un sistema simplemente productivo o un sistema solamente protector? Y ahí en ese sentido, yo tengo que empezar a jugar con el brillo solar, que es el que me va a permitir aumentar o disminuir el sombrío sobre el cultivo principal, que en este caso es el café, donde en los extremos se va a permitir, en los extremos de las áreas productivas me estoy refiriendo, se va a permitir que haya una mayor intensidad lumínica. De esta manera, cuando se cultiva bajo una bóveda forestal, en términos de selva, el término bóveda forestal se refiere a selva, se presentan beneficios de biodiversidad, especialmente para las aves, y entre más se proteja el nicho ecológico de las aves, un mayor incremento de biodiversidad se va a presentar en el medio. Así que el llamado es a recuperar esos sistemas productivos que se vienen presentando desde las épocas y de las zonas donde surgió el café y la caficultura. Es decir, las zonas de Etiopía, las zonas de Kenia, las zonas de Tanzania, donde todavía logramos ver cultivos en los cuales se combina la producción con los sistemas silvestres. Prácticamente no es que se cultive el café, sino que nace de manera natural, y lo que se hace es aprovechar, es tratar de copiar ese modelo para poder seguir teniendo un equilibrio en los sistemas productivos. Next, please. En los ejemplos de café bajo sombra, tenemos varios ejemplos. Dentro de estos ejemplos tenemos, por ejemplo, Perú, donde aún se tienen bosques vírgenes, y en esos bosques vírgenes hay unos procesos de entresaque selectivo. Cuando hablamos de entresaque selectivo, estamos hablando de aprovechamientos de madera selectivos para ciertos ejercicios comerciales. El segundo fenómeno que se tiene en el Perú son bosques con un segundo crecimiento, lo que se llaman sistemas de sucesión vegetal, en los cuales hay un crecimiento en segundo nivel y un entresaque selectivo de algunas especies arbóreas que tienen importancia económica. Y en la tercera fase se tienen unos procesos de arborización reconstruida. La arborización reconstruida es una manera, en lo que en Colombia se ha hablado, reconstrucción de bosques nativos, es decir, recuperar semillas, empezar a multiplicarlas para repoblar estos agroecosistemas. Esta es uno de los ejemplos que se ha desarrollado en Perú. En Costa Rica se tienen bosques del origen del café, es decir, zonas boscosas donde fue introducido sistemas productivos de café y que siguen siendo resilientes y siguen siendo modelos productivos agrosostenibles. Existen cafetales con exceso de sombra. Cuando hablamos de exceso de sombra es que existe una alta densidad de árboles que tienen allí un sistema agroforestal denso. Hay cafetales con alta densidad y sombra regulada. ¿A qué se refiere alta densidad? Densidad del cultivo del café. Esta alta densidad pues va en búsqueda de alta productividad en términos de café, pero con una regulación en cuanto a la sombra, y esa sombra ya tiene unos arreglos y unos diseños geométricos específicos dependiendo de la topografía. Y hay café con una o dos especies de árboles en los cuales ya prima pues el sistema productivo cafetero, pero muy seguramente se está acompañando con árboles que pueden ser para madera o para frutales. Este es el modelo que se tiene en Costa Rica. En México existen cultivos rústicos, cultivos tradicionales, cultivos comerciales, monocultivo de café bajo sombra y cultivos a plena exposición solar. Y en esta región, que está en una latitud que está por encima de los 11, 12 grados de latitud norte, pues existen unos sistemas que deben ir acompañados con unos modelos no solamente agrosostenibles, sino productivos, porque los sistemas y la frecuencia de las floraciones es totalmente diferente. En Colombia, que tiene unas condiciones muy parecidas a la zona de origen del café, es decir, zonas muy parecidas a regiones como las de Etiopía, tenemos modelos de café a plena exposición solar, lotes de café con semisombra y lotes de café con sombra. En esta siguiente slide vamos a ver algunos de estos factores. Next, please, Salemu. ¿Cuándo se define un café a plena exposición solar? Un café a plena exposición solar es una zona que tiene, es un lote que tiene por hectárea menos de 20 árboles o menos de 300 especies arbustivas. Esto es un café a plena exposición solar definido por el Centro Nacional de Investigaciones de Café en Colombia, Semicafé. Un café con semisombra se define como una hectárea que tiene entre 20 y 50 árboles de café y entre 300 y 750 especies arbustivas. Y esos arbustos pueden ser de corta vida o de larga duración. Y un café con sombra se define una hectárea de café que tiene más de 50 árboles o más de 750 especies arbustivas. Entonces aquí es donde se hacen estas definiciones y estas diferencias del factor que está relacionado directamente con la sombra. Ahora vamos a ver unos ejemplos. Next, please. Please, Salemo. Entonces, dentro de los ejemplos, vamos a tener que hay unas características en los sistemas agroforestales. Esas características que tienen los sistemas agroforestales deben ir en función de tener incrementos en la producción del cultivo principal, que en este caso es nuestro café. Segundo, que tengan aceptación por los productores. Hay muchos productores que siguen sin entender o querer entender que hay dificultades en términos de aceptación al modelo productivo. Qué pena, por aquí hay una voz. Bueno, la otra es continuidad, es decir, yo no voy a poner la sombra simplemente por moda, no, es porque necesitamos tener continuidad para que esto nos genere resiliencia y podamos empezar realmente a generar sistemas de adaptación constante. Please, next. Alemán. Gracias. ¿Qué beneficio nos va a traer a nosotros como productores el tener sistemas de sombra o semisombra en el cultivo del café? Vamos a tener todos estos beneficios. Vamos a tener la opción de poder tener plantas medicinales, de producción de taninos, que nos van a permitir el ciclaje de nutrientes porque estos árboles van a poder extraer de mayor profundidad nutrientes que van a ser llevados a la superficie cuando se caen las hojas y se descomponen. Autosuficiencia creciente en términos de sostenibilidad ambiental, estabilización de suelos, incremento de materia orgánica en el suelo, una regulación del ciclo hidrobiológico. Y cuando hablamos de la regulación del ciclo hidrológico, pues obviamente vamos a dejar de depender de tener que implementar sistemas de riego para nuestros sistemas productivos cafeteros. Si yo logro regular el sistema hidrológico, logro regular el sistema productivo. Conservación de humedad en el suelo y protección del suelo contra la erosión. Esto pues obviamente me va a reducir la posibilidad de inundaciones y además me va a permitir interceptar lluvias como lo que se llaman lluvias horizontales, que en este caso es la neblina. La neblina se puede condensar en los árboles y obviamente cae al suelo y entonces esto nos va a favorecer muchos procesos productivos. Esto además nos va a permitir que en estos próximos años, donde tenemos como una alerta muy pronta, realmente hablar de 25, 27 años es muy poco tiempo, pues nos va a generar unas variaciones climáticas positivas. ¿Por qué? Porque esto va a permitir fijar CO2, nos va a permitir producir algunos alimentos, fibras, madera, alimentación. Vamos a mejorar la producción de materia orgánica, como les decía ahora, proteger fuentes hídricas, reducir el impacto de la lluvia en el suelo, regular el microclima y reducción del uso de algunos componentes como combustible. En muy pocas zonas del mundo se tienen cultivos de bosques dendroenergéticos. Nunca hemos, o son muy pocas las zonas donde se tiene un cultivo dendroenergético. Así que hay alternativas de especies que tienen esa característica y que tienen un crecimiento rápido y que pueden ser aprovechados de manera lógica para que no se pierda ese equilibrio que debe tener nuestro cafetal. Todo esto hace parte de esos beneficios ambientales, de esos beneficios económicos que los árboles le hacen o le aportan a la finca cafetera en términos productivos. Next, please. Igualmente, pues además de lo que acabamos de ver, vamos a tener una interacción ecológica. Una interacción que no es solamente interacción genoma por ambiente, es decir, especie productiva, en este caso café, con un ambiente específico, sino que le vamos a ayudar a mejorar este modelo adaptativo al modelo ecológico que se tiene en este momento. Cuando hablamos de protección del cultivo y hablamos de conservación del suelo a través de un sistema boscoso, estamos reduciendo el daño que se puede causar por tener un monocultivo, porque se retiene agua, se extraen nutrientes, se mejora la estabilidad de los suelos, se disminuyen los riesgos de erosión, pero sobre todo porque existe una relación directa de la sombra con el mejoramiento de la fertilidad del suelo, que está directamente relacionada con el sostenimiento de la producción. Y cuando estamos hablando de sostenimiento de producción, indirectamente se está relacionando con altos niveles de calidad en el sistema productivo. Entonces miremos que esto pues son los tipos de acciones que nos ayudan a mejorar este proceso. Next, please. Thanks. Bueno, dentro de los árboles, dentro de los modelos forestales, se tiene que hay árboles asociados con cultivos perennes, hay árboles en asociación con cultivos anuales, es decir, que se cultivan árboles en las calles del café. Hay sistemas silvopastoriles en los cuales ya se combina cultivo de café con sombra e incluso algunas gramíneas para tener allí animales de pastoreo. Se utilizan modelos de cortinas rompevientos y barreras vivas con árboles que protegen el cultivo del café en algunas regiones. Y hay plantaciones de árboles en linderos como cercas vivas para separar, por ejemplo, modelos productivos orgánicos de modelos productivos convencionales. Eso hace parte de ese sistema que se presenta aquí. ¿Qué otros sistemas se presentan? Next, please. Existen otros modelos como los que vamos a ver a continuación. Hay distintos sistemas. Miren, tenemos, el primero es bosques protectores. Esos bosques protectores nos permiten asegurar una estabilidad en la conservación y usabilidad de las aguas que yo tengo en la finca. El segundo son linderos con árboles de café, es decir, zonas que deben estar separadas. Los puntos pequeños son café, los puntos grandes son una especie de árboles. Existen zonas donde se deben utilizar franjas o barreras rompevientos porque están en zonas con alto impacto de vientos fuertes. En el caso de la cordillera de la zona andina, en Latinoamérica, en Sudamérica, existe una influencia muy fuerte de los vientos alisios en unas zonas, en unas épocas del año. Esto nos obliga a tener en algunas regiones sistemas protectores como franjas y barreras. Existen la protección de fuentes y de drenajes naturales como esta cuarta opción. Tenemos sistemas de árboles que protegen caminos y carreteras, sobre todo en zonas de ladera donde se trazan carreteras que muchas veces no tienen suficiente estudio de ingeniería, entonces los árboles nos ayudan a retener esa estabilidad de suelos. Existen combinaciones al azar de árboles como sistema de sombrío en los cultivos, árboles como sombrío, pero ya en sistemas un poco más organizados, y lo que veíamos ahora como cultivos en callejones. Este puede ser una de las tantas opciones que existen y han sido parte de estudios que viene adelantando desde hace muchos años el gremio cafetero en Colombia y que ha implementado como estrategia en muchas regiones. De hecho, comités departamentales o sea, ya de manera regional, como en el departamento del Cauca, donde nos encontramos ubicados, han diseñado una estrategia que se denomina ni una hectárea más sin sombra. Y esto viene acompañado de proyectos de cooperación internacional, donde hay muchas empresas y muchas entidades que están acompañando y fortaleciendo esta idea para seguir enriqueciendo el tema de protección. Por favor, la siguiente, Alemón. Next, please. Next, please. Thank you. Next, please. Next. Estos son ejemplos y estos son modelos. El cuadro anterior tiene las especies, las mismas especies que ustedes ven aquí en la lista. Y esta es la distribución espacial de los diferentes componentes. Este es un ejemplo de un sistema de producción de café en Colombia asociado, en el cual en la misma área se tiene 34 árboles de inga. Esta es una especie, el guamo, el nombre científico es inga. El nogal es una cordia oleodora, 34 árboles por hectárea. De plátano, una musa, tenemos 278. De café, 4.500 árboles. De frijol, 120.000 plantas. De maíz, 33.000 plantas. Y de tefrosia, que es una leguminosa, 28.000 plantas. ¿Cómo se distribuyen? Next, please, para que veamos cuál es la distribución que se puede tener en este sentido. Aquí está el establecimiento de esos componentes dentro de ese sistema. Las mismas especies, inga, musas, cordia liodora, tenemos café, todo lo rojo, el reddish coffee, cultivos transitorios, maíz, frijol, y tenemos también acompañado aquí en algunas zonas ese modelo. Y esta es la imagen precisamente de este modelo establecido como un sistema que se ha logrado implementar en algunas zonas en Colombia. Next, please. Estas son especies que se utilizan de manera permanente o temporal para acompañar el cultivo de café, principalmente leguminosas. Y esas leguminosas, además de proteger la sombra, aportan nitrógeno al suelo. Next, please. Estos son modelos tradicionales. Como ustedes pueden ver, estos modelos tradicionales han sido modelos que de alguna manera, pues, han sido benéficos en términos de productividad, pero en términos de protección ambiental no mucho. Si ustedes ven esta imagen, tenemos el suelo desprotegido, tenemos plátano en barreras, algunos árboles, el sistema de café, pero el suelo está sin protección, es decir, no tenemos unas coberturas nobles que tengan la precaución de proteger el suelo contra la radiación o contra el exceso de lluvia. Next, please. Estos son procesos que se han ido mejorando. Ya hoy mucha gente viene trabajando manejo de coberturas nobles en los suelos. Cuando nosotros vamos a hacer un cultivo de café con sistema de sombrío, debemos tener en cuenta cómo aprovechar mejor el brillo solar. Y en este caso, vemos que aquí hay unos cultivos. Este ejemplo 1 no ayuda mucho a que el brillo solar se aproveche bien por parte del café. ¿Por qué? Porque los surcos están en sentido norte-sur. Como el café se siembra en zonas tropicales, esas zonas tropicales, el café hay que sembrarlo en sentido este-oeste. Y en ese mismo sentido se puede sembrar la sombra. La sombra va a regular las temperaturas, el brillo solar de manera más eficiente, pero vamos a tener mayor aprovechamiento de la luz solar por parte del cultivo. Y si sembramos la sombra dispersa, esta sombra dispersa también nos ayuda a mejorar el aprovechamiento del cultivo principal, aprovechando la radiación solar. Y esto ya está estudiado y está establecido en muchos sistemas productivos en Colombia. Next, please. Bueno, finalmente, creo yo que podemos cerrar aquí. Una de las alternativas más importantes que se tienen hoy en día es acogerse a un principio que han desarrollado desde hace muchos años, que es la agroecología. La agroecología es un modelo que busca minimizar el impacto negativo en el medio ambiente que tiene la agricultura convencional. De esta manera, lo que nosotros vamos a tratar de hacer a través de la agroecología es optimizar y concientizar el uso de los recursos naturales, prevenir el desgaste de los suelos y disminuir el uso de tanto de productos agroquímicos como de nutrientes de síntesis química. Obviamente, lo que nos va a permitir esto es mejorar la producción de alimentos, mejorar la producción de nuestro medio de subsistencia, que en este caso es el café, pero asimismo mejorar la calidad de los productos que estamos consumiendo, siendo respetuosos con nuestro entorno natural. Estas son muchas de las alternativas. Obviamente hay más, pero desafortunadamente el tiempo no nos da. Entonces, no sé si quieren, pasamos a la parte de preguntas. Aurora, Lemu, si quieren, dejamos aquí la presentación y pasamos a la parte de preguntas. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Muchas gracias, Javier.
Thanks. Gracias.
Por su excelente
Bueno,
presentación.
no sé si hayan preguntas. Creo que por acá hay unas preguntas escritas. ¿Qué tipo de especies de árboles son
Yes,
usados en el
there are
café
some
en
two
Colombia?
questions. The first one is from Urgesa Toshoma. I think both of them are from Urgesa. So the
Sí,
first
¿cuáles son las
question
especies
is,
de árboles?
can you go to the Spanish or?
Pues mira, Urgesa, en Colombia se utilizan muchísimas especies. Se ha utilizado cordia liodora, se ha utilizado robles, se han utilizado principalmente leguminosas. Hay distintas especies de leguminosas que se utilizan mucho en Colombia. Y también se ha combinado el sistema productivo con árboles frutales, cítricos, aguacates, guayabas, guanábanas, que tienen obviamente distintos beneficios, sobre todo desde la parte económica. Esa combinación de sistemas productivos pues ha ayudado a dar unas alternativas a nuestros productores para disminuir la cantidad de problemas tanto económicos como ambientales. Y pregunta Urgecha por el eucalipto. Los árboles de eucalipto se utilizan en algunas regiones, pero ese eucalipto se puede utilizar en sistemas casi que en plena exposición, es decir, máximo 20 árboles por hectárea, porque el eucalipto tiene una desventaja y es que produce unas sustancias alelopáticas que alteran un poco el sistema productivo de la planta que está alrededor o que está cerca. Hemos empezado algunas pruebas desde Tecnicafé en asocio con la empresa Smurfit Kappa, que es una empresa forestal que está aquí en el territorio, para hacer distintas pruebas con distintos diseños de sistemas productivos de café eucalipto y café pino incluido. Lo que se ha analizado además es que el eucalipto consume mucha agua y en algunos casos, sobre todo cuando tenemos problemas de escasez de agua o problemas de fenómeno del Niño, donde aumentan las temperaturas, pues obviamente va a haber una competencia por el consumo de agua que pueda causar el eucalipto con respecto al café. Esas son básicamente el tema. ¿El carbonero debe sembrarse a qué distancia? Sandra, muy buenos días. El carbonero se puede sembrar amplio. El carbonero tiene una copa muy amplia en la parte superior. El carbonero debería sembrarse entre 10 y 15 árboles por hectárea. No te doy distancias porque ya depende de la topografía y cómo tengas distribuido el cultivo de café y qué porte de café tengas sembrado, si es de porte bajo o de porte alto. Pero el carbonero se puede sembrar muy bien distribuido y como es una planta que crece tanto, entonces se puede sembrar de esa manera. No sé, Celia, si tenemos alguna otra pregunta. Ok. Bueno, no sé si
All
haya
right,
preguntas.
thank you. We have you finished, Javi?
Thank you,
Thank you
Lemo.
so much. Thank you, everyone. Sorry for pushing the time beyond 6. We're supposed to finish at 6, but thank you all for staying a little bit longer with us. I thank all of the presenters and all of you who joined us today for this important discussion on the impact of climate change on the coffee sector and strategies for promoting sustainability and resilience. We have heard from the two experts and participants about the challenges facing coffee farmers and communities, as well as some of the innovative approaches that are being taken to address these challenges. We hope that today's presentations and discussions have inspired you to take action in your own communities and to collaborate with others in the coffee sector to promote sustainable and climate resilient coffee production. So let's continue this important conversation. This conversation is part of a community of practice which we have established under the project called EthioLatinCoffee. We call upon you to work together to create a brighter future for coffee farmers, their families, and their communities. Recently, soon we'll organize another session in a month's time, and all of you are invited to join us. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Celia for your excellent interpretation. And please follow our handle at Osrea, at OSSREA, on Twitter and YouTube. You'll find all the all the video recordings. And let me put the handle here at Osrea. If you go to YouTube or Twitter and put at Osrea, you'll find the video recording of this webinar and also previous webinars and also upcoming webinars. And you'll also will have the opportunity to know when we are going to hold the next session. So with that, I thank you again for your participation and have a great day in Colombia and Honduras and a great evening here in Ethiopia. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Bye bye.
Gracias a todos. Feliz día
Thank
y
you.
nos veremos próximamente. Un abrazo.
Thank you. Hasta la próxima.
Bye bye.